Good morning and welcome to the AAAM Women in the African Auto Industry webinar. My name is Penelope Mkwanazi and I'll be the moderator for this session. It's great to be part of this session and thank you for taking out the time to join us and to make your contribution. And before we get started, I need to cover some housekeeping items. You are welcome to ask questions throughout the session via the Q&A tab that's at the bottom of your screen. And please don't post questions on the chat group, as there's a chance that we might not see them and they might not get answered. If you are wanting to ask a question, please raise your hand. Please also note that your camera will be off for the duration of the presentation, as well as your mic. And if you do want to engage and speak, indicate with your hand and somebody will let you in, and they will switch on your mic and your video. Also, please note at the end of the session, there'll be a link on your exit screen for a survey and feedback in terms of the webinar. And if you miss anything, not to worry, there'll be a YouTube link that's sent out to all attendees within the next 24 hours. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into the topic at hand. The topic of women in industry is an important one, regardless which industry we're referring to. However, we've come a long way, I think, as the African continent in terms of the women agenda in general. And some of the discussion points that we'll be delving into in terms of women in the African continent industry will be as follows. It'll be really around the willful intent for the automotive industry to recognize not only the need for women to be present in the space, but also the value that women can bring to the table, just based on their diversity as a group and also on an individual level. The second one is around meaningful participation and inclusion of women within the automotive sector in the African continent. That is not concentrated only in specific functions and levels, but is really stratified across a number of business areas. Retention also becomes another important topic that we're going to cover. How does the auto industry ensure that once we get women participating in these spaces in a meaningful way, we make sure that we also progress the change that will allow them to grow careers that are sustainable? And on this note, I'll be engaging with the panel on some of the systemic and structural changes that will need to take place for this to happen. That could be culture, it could be social norms, and it could also be infrastructural changes that need to take place. Then in terms of my panel, I am joined by 4 panelists today, and I'm going to quickly go through the background just to let you know, what drives them, what are their passions, and how did they get into this automotive industry, and also their career progression throughout their own careers. So first up, we've got Miriam Elumi. Miriam is second vice president for the Tunisia Automotive Association. Miriam represents more than 200 automotive companies based in Tunisia, with local and international authorities, institutions, NGOs, as well as foreign federations and associations. And her role in this is to promote exchanges, collaborations, and synergies between players in the automotive sector, support the Tunisian authorities to develop and promote the sector in Tunisia and internationally, and also to improve the business environment for the sector to encourage investment and business creation. Miriam was convinced by the technological potential of Tunisia, and as a result, she participates actively to several projects aiming to set up an appropriate ecosystem that will attract and develop sustainable mobility initiatives. Mrs. Miriam Elumi is also a Corporate Affairs and Business Development Director and member of the Executive Committee of the COFICAB Group, which is Tunisia's first international and industrial company and world leader in design, manufacture, and sales of electrical cables for the automotive industry. And prior to this, Miriam was project administrator with Kronberg and Schubert Group in Germany, and had few experiences with consulting firms. Welcome, Miriam, to the panel. Secondly, we've got Marina Zambo, Country Manager of Avis Fleet Zambia, a fellow of the Chartered Certificate Accountants, FCCA, with a master's degree in business administration. Marina has worked in various industries, including audit, mining, Interestingly enough, mining, which is where I met Marina, manufacturing, legal, and is now in the automotive industry as country manager for Avis Fleet. Marina is also a trained career mentor and has also completed training in Women in Leadership Development Program, WLDP. She believes that true diversity is in creating equal opportunities for all, and we cannot wait to hear from Marina on some of her views. Welcome, Marina. Then next up, we have got Ndulela Tanga, Acting Head of Corporate Strategy for VW Group South Africa, Volkswagen Group South Africa. Ndulela is married with 3 children. She studied polymer technology at Port Elizabeth. She has been in the industry for 18 years, and she started working at VW in 2004 and has been working there ever since. Her career started in product engineering as an engineer. Then she relocated to Germany as a project leader for 3 years. And on her return in 2016, she worked as a supplier development specialist in procurement. And in that year, she hosted the first ever Black-owned supplier day when dignitaries from all over the country were present. It was a sponsored showcase of talented entrepreneurs within South Africa, entrepreneurs who are hungry to do business within automotive. And in 2017, she was a judge at the VW Ntinga project, where the winners were awarded a contract after pitching their business to the panel. And she has since been working in product strategy and is currently acting as head of corporate strategy for VW South Africa. Welcome onto our panel. Then moving on to our final panel member, and I'd like to welcome Esther Buthelezi, who was appointed Government Affairs and Transformation Director at Ford South Africa on the 1st of June 2021. Previously, Esther held the title of Corporate Transformation Manager. However, the promotion now sees her adding the full scope of government affairs to her portfolio. Esther was born and raised in Soweto, matriculating from Imbongo High School as a young adult, and she completed her tertiary education, obtaining a degree in theology from the University of KwaZulu-Natal and a qualification in human resource management from Damelin. Her automotive career began with Automobile Association of South Africa, following a stint in the banking sector, where she joined Volvo Cars South Africa in 1998. At present, Esther celebrates 19 years of service at Ford. She joined the automotive company in 2002 and has held multiple positions, extending from sales planning, dealer development, government fleet sales, and regional sales. And in 2019, Esther was appointed as Corporate Transformation Manager, a role that has now become expanded to include government affairs as well. And Esther, on a private capacity, drives the community empowerment, and this can be seen throughout her career. However, her leadership platforms have mostly afforded her the opportunity to make an impact in the important areas of supplier development, the implementation of the YES program, and integrating the BBBE scorecard as well. When Esther is not playing the role of corporate superwoman, she's a loving wife, nurturing mother to her family, and her hobbies include horticulture, and she adores traveling to remote and interesting locations as well. So welcome to our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. If we can just get started on the topic at hand. I've introduced the panel members, and I would like to allow them the opportunity to give their opening remarks with regards to our topic today, which is women in the African auto industry. There was a recent study done that involved more than 200 women participating in an online survey, which included OEMs, suppliers, dealers, finance companies, and other organizations throughout the value chain. The purpose of the study was to generate a broad view of how companies can effectively recruit, retain, and advance women in industry. It is interesting what some of the statistics that came out of that study in terms of what are the top reasons women avoid careers in the automotive industry. And 65% attributed this to an unappealing environment. 59% mentioned a lack of work-life balance. 46% indicated lack of flexible work schedule. 39% cited a lack of advancement in opportunities, and 35% indicated a perceived caliber of people as another reason. So I'm going to open it up quickly to our panel members. I'm going to start firstly with Miriam Elumi, our second vice president for Tunisia Automotive Association, if she would like to share some views in terms of how she sees this topic, what is some of her experience, and what do we need to do going forward to improve where we are. Miriam, over to you.
Good morning. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Penny, and good morning, dear ladies. Good morning, Marina, Ndulela, and Esther. I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to speak today for this very important topic. So to start, and actually right after the figures that you just shared, Penny, I'd like to say I've always been car enthusiast. So personally, I loved cars since my younger age, and I decided very early that I wanted to work in this industry from childhood, actually. Also, I've been very lucky to come from a family-owned business in the industrial sector, and also quite active in the automotive industry. But this gave me one big luck. I realized that with time in my career, that I had great role models actually to observe. I've been surrounded by very powerful women, business leaders, and that has always been an inspiration. So I've always knew that I would be, and at least I always tried my best to make sure that I would be a successful woman in the automotive industry, a successful businesswoman. Now, talking about the topic that brings us here today, I have to say that historically, I didn't like the topic much. I mean, as I grew in experience and in rank over my career, I started being invited in more and more of these events about women and gender equality, and I didn't like it much because I thought it was demeaning somehow, and that's something I kind of wanted to ignore. I always work for no matter which gender I was, and just decided to ignore that. But the thing is, by attending these events and hearing the stories of the different women, I actually started figuring out that many things actually happened to me over my career, which I decided to ignore, but that actually could stop people, and that it's important to share about it. It's important to share with other people who have the same issues, basically, who face the same hurdles in their career. It's important to inspire them, and it's important to speak up, basically, for the future generations. I mean, as I had the chance to consider that it was not a problem, I think we need to give the chance to other women also to hear experience of successful women, and hopefully it will become an inspiration.
Great, excellent for sharing that, Miriam. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to move over to Marina Zambio, Country Manager, Avis Fleet Zambia. Marina, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Penny. Good morning, Penny, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, ladies. I'm so happy to be here today to share what I have experienced as a woman in the various industries that I have worked. And I think for the automotive industry, as we are striving to make the automotive industry contribute to the economic growth of Africa, I believe that it is never too early or never too late to start talking about making sure we carry everyone on board. And much as we may think that the playing field is level, it is not level. We need to start talking and carrying everyone at the same time. So the discussion, I think, has come at the right time. And I think it is important that we start engaging the various social sectors. And women do form part of the social sectors that we need to embrace and bring on board. I have come to believe that no matter how good you are as a woman, you do at some point in time need somebody who can just encourage you and push you on and say, this is doable, regardless of the field you're going into, you can still do this. So I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I hope that we will encourage other ladies and other women to join the industry or to stay in the industry. Because I think that those are the two key things that we need: attract more women and also see how we return those who have joined the industry. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Marina. And now I'm going to move over to Ndulela Kanga, who said to me earlier in the week, used a very eloquent quote that I think also will form part of this discussion. She said, think bigger than your current circumstances. So on that note, welcome, Ndulela. Would you like to give us your opening remarks on the topic? Thank you.
Sure. Morning, ladies. Morning, Penny. Thank you for your facilitation. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting morning. I think from my side, I've experienced something completely different to Miriam. I've had male role models who've helped open doors. And in my career, I've actually realized that the closer you get to the top, the fewer women you actually have to be able to share some experiences which sometimes seem a little bit maybe basic to other people. Things like how we show up, what our level of confidence is when we walk into a room. Those things seem simple, but the way that you approach things and the way that you address conversations also adds to how you will help solve problems and take part in decision making going forward. So yeah, I've been very I'm grateful for the fact that I've been in good positions, maybe at the right place at the right time, because I realize that my circumstances and my life does not start and end in Dukwa. So yeah, I think bigger than your current circumstances and open yourself up to learning, and the journey becomes amazing. And it's great that we've got women who are willing to sacrifice of their time, of our experiences to share with other people, because I also still believe that our sector is not attractive to women. What we need to do is try to change that. When conversation is a great way to start.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much, Ndulela. And now I'm going to move over to Esther Butelezi, Government Affairs and Transformation Director for Ford South Africa. Welcome, May Esther. You've got the floor.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Penny, and thank you to the beautiful lady on the panel. And I thank everyone that has made this possible for us today. My opening remark is, Ndulela said, think more than what you are. I'm saying that don't let your past define who you are. Because, we have always grown up thinking that women are supposed to be in different sectors, or they're supposed to be in different boxes. But today the world is open for us, and there's a huge possibilities where we can all tap in as women. Coming to the auto sector, it's actually quite a beautiful sector once you learn to embrace it. I know the woman might tend to disagree with me, or a lot of women around the globe might disagree with it. It is a beautiful sector in the sense that you are the one that carves your niche within there. You are the one that defines where you want to be. And it only comes through hard work, tenacity, patience. You need to practice a lot of patience, because it's not a place where you would come in and you get given everything on a plate. So you as a person need to make that conscious decision to say, this is who I am. I am going to work 3 times to prove that I can. And I think the attitude with women going in there, our own attitudes is that we can. As women, we can do a lot of things. We can become mothers, we can become partners, we become caregivers, we become nurturers, and as well as the auto industry, we are able to embrace it, and we can. So those are my opening remarks, Penny. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Esther. And I'd like to just carry on as a departure point based on what Ndulela said in terms of her life motto. Think bigger than your current circumstances. If we have to think bigger than the current circumstances of where women are in the auto industry, Ndulela, what are the things that you anticipate in the future for the industry, number one, when it comes to women participation and contribution? And what should we be concentrating on or investing in so that 10 years down the line, this space looks much different to what it looks like now, and women are able to become significant contributors in this space? And also lastly, if you have to advise women who want to come into the auto industry, how should they apply your motto of think bigger than your current circumstances?
That was a very big question. I'll try and answer it as best as I can. So I think for me, when I think about where the auto sector is going, It's unbelievable the amount of possibilities. We are in the middle of a point in time where we're changing the technologies that we need. We are changing the culture that we want to live in. We are dictating for ourselves the type of work environments that we want. So when I think about what the future will look like, and where women fit into that, I think it's important to bring what we've currently been brought up with. So basically, we've all got strengths. And yes, of course, we've got development areas, but there's a natural authenticity that each of us can bring to the table. And I also liked what Ma'am Esther said, in that there's a niche that you can create for yourself. So bring your best self. Be sure that your interests and your passion are managed and maintained at all times, because sometimes we are looking for a job and not looking to build a career. The patience that you require for automotive means that you know what it is that you want for your career. And when I say career, I'm not talking about the day-to-day thing that you do. It's the whole package of the person that you are, what sparks your interests, how you get involved in decision-making, problem solving, debating, how you feel and care about people. What are the things that you feel are important to create that humanness that only women can bring to the table? Maybe I'm a bit biased, but there's like a human element that women bring to any industry. Automotive has suffered a culture of harshness. It seemed like as if we're only working in a manufacturing space, but that's changing. I've seen many industries where we've got a cultural objective that is linked to the chief operations officer. The MD takes transformation and diversity as a personal MBO. So there's clearly a change in the way in which we want to be treated and the way that people want to be treated. And I think women are very quick to adapt to how humane does this make me seem, and how humane am I to others, and how do I improve that? So that's the one thing I think women fit in perfectly, and automotive sector needs us. So let's keep at it, please. And then the second thing is, when I think about the change in diversity of what we do, we went from combustion engines, now we're talking electrification, we're talking big words like mobility. When I think about the future career paths of what women can do now to prepare ourselves, we need to think of artificial intelligence. We think autonomy. We think about agile workforces. We think about what people need to change cultures, like training and development, mentoring, coaching. So many careers converge into the auto industry. We become business owners who give services, provide services to the auto industry. And that's why I'm saying, if you think about any kind of business, and automotive sector not being different, there's so much that women can bring. If you're in technology, if you're in research and development, if you're offering services, you're in maintenance, you're currently running a machinery plant. And that's the thing. I've met business women who run manufacturing companies and they run them well. So it's not only for men and only for women. It's the combination of the skills that you have nurtured over the years and your natural, authentic self. The sky is not even the limit if you think about merging what you see as your career and merging it with the person that you actually are. We are all unique, and that is very, very helpful to create that niche.
Excellent. Thanks, Ndulela. So I've heard between yourself and Ma'am Esther mention that, automotive is a beautiful place to be. Automotive is a place of possibilities, and there's a lot happening, and people have opportunity in order to grow in whatever space or passion that they choose. I'm going to switch gears a little bit to Marina. Marina, with that said, there are still some level of barriers that are experienced by women that are trying to enter into the automotive industry. And some of them are self-imposed and some of them are imposed by the industry. Can you share from your perspective, what are those self-imposed barriers that are experienced by women as they try and enter the industry? And what are those barriers that just naturally occur within the automotive industry? We've heard there's opportunity now for women to get in. We need to deal with the barriers that are there. So can you give us your perspective on that?
So in terms of barriers that I feel are there, to start with, it's the brand itself of the industry. When you talk automotive industry, it's very similar to the mining industry. A lot of people see it. So it's just been branded as a man's world. So that's the first thing. People think it's a man's world, and they don't see, like Ndulela has said, women don't see where they fit in this particular industry, because from time immemorial, people have thought this is a man's world and they don't want to enter it. But I think that it is important as we go forward to start finding our place as women in the industry and and getting to hold each other as we go along. As a human being, our nature is that we want to associate with other people. So if you go into an industry, there are very few people that feel comfortable being the only woman in a room full of men. And then if you find another woman, take her along, at least you find somebody who can, like give you some comfort or assurance that we are in this together. So yes, the lack of diversity is the first thing that basically makes people stay away from the industry, because they see it as it's a man's world. Then secondly, it's our industry has been more or less manufacturing industry, seen as a manufacturing industry with very poor work-life balance. So if we're going to bring in a woman, let me say we're going to bring in Marina. A lot of the women on this panel, I could actually associate, we're being described as married with 3 children, a mother or a daughter or whatever. So you employ me, allow me to be the full me, and not have to leave part of my life at the gate because I'm working in an industry that does not take care of the fact that I still have to be a mother to somebody, I still have to be a daughter to somebody, I'm still somebody's wife. So our working culture, our work schedules should be flexible enough to allow women to thrive. And I'm not asking for different or a privilege for women. I'm just asking for us to take care. It's possible. I think that if we learned anything from the pandemic, it's that most of the things we believed can also change. We believe that we can only work from the office. COVID taught us we can work from anywhere in the world. That flexibility we learned from the pandemic needs to also be applied to our industry, and say how else can we shuffle things around to allow somebody to be the full person and not have to leave themselves leave part of their life at the gate or forgo some important part of their life for them to work for us. So we need to look into those barriers, those systems we have put for ourselves that make it impossible or very difficult for women to actually get into this industry. And another barrier, I think, is when you read the reports about why women don't want to enter the automotive industry, or why they leave the automotive industry, is they don't see themselves growing in the industry. So we find that if you look at some of the surveys that have been done, 20%, 50% of the top 20 automotive companies in the world have 0 female representation at executive level. So I'll speak from my industry, which is car leasing and car rental. It does not make sense for us to have 90% women in the cost center, managing our cost center, and they have 0 representation at executive level. Who's taking care of their safety? Who's taking care of their issues that pertain to them specifically as women? So if you don't see yourself if you don't see yourself growing in an industry to a level where you can be the best version of yourself, you are likely, either you're not going to even apply for that job, or if you are in that job, you start looking for somewhere else where you can grow in, you can thrive and grow into somebody greater. So it is important that even as we try to attract women, we put in place clear career path growth that don't inhibit them because they're just women, or women just don't see themselves growing in the industry because certain positions are not filled with women at all. So I think that when we talk about barriers, it's those things. Let's try to be more inclusive. Let's try to create balance, but also be deliberate. When we say gender and inclusivity, for me, it's not about the number. If we say we cannot celebrate that we've reached 50% female representation in our organization, if that 50% is women that are at the entry level only, it should be 50% starting from the highest level, going further and going down, and not starting from the lowest level going up. So for me, I think that is what is going to help us to attract and retain women into the industry.
Excellent. Thanks, Marina. And I think, it's not about, women wanting privileges over what men currently have in the industry, but it's really about walking into a career where you can do your job in a safe way, in a safe space, with the right mindset and with the right mental capacity. And when you're dealing with some of the things that women have to deal with, it does become very difficult. So, I think the call to leaders is to say, how do we build social systems that make it necessary or make the necessary cultural changes for women to be able to be meaningful contributors to the automotive industry. So thank you for that, completely aligned with your views. And then I'm going to move to Miriam a little bit. Miriam, you come from an Arabic country that's seen to be very progressive in terms of women's rights. And I would like to hear some of the views that you've got from your perspective. Can you tell me, how has this been applied within the automotive industry in Tunisia when it comes to participation, representation, and even equality of women? What do things like remuneration look like? What does development look like in terms of participation? And interestingly enough, you are the second president for the Tunisian Automotive Association. And do you have women represented in that association, and what's their level of participation? I would like to hear some views from you on that.
Thank you for this long and very comprehensive question. I'll try to address the best I can. So to start with Tunisia, since its independence in 1956, Tunisia adopted the personal status code that basically granted the principle of equality between men and women. So from that time, actually, the country implemented many laws, programs, strategies, and they chose basically to bet on women's education, health, and freedom, which were believed as being the pillars of any modern society. And I have to say that this has been quite successful, because it allowed Tunisia to become the Arabic country of women's rights. Today, the place of women in Tunisian society is unique compared to Arabic countries, but also compared to sometimes some of the most advanced European countries. For example, we have equal pay for equal work principle is guaranteed by law in Tunisia. Now, this is still not the same in many mature European countries. And I think this was extremely important to set the basis, basically to allow really women to get well integrated in the society. On top of that, there were also many laws, which I mentioned, which granted, I would like to say, basic principles, but unfortunately, it's still not the case in many other countries. But for instance, we have polygamy prohibition, right to divorce, protection against violence, right to go for abortion. And many of these laws actually allowed women to play a real role within the society in Tunisia and to be extremely strong. Today, women's representation in parliament, for example, is more important than many countries of the OECD and other emerging countries. So, yes, I think even also a few years ago, Tunisia was granted the best rank for women's social rights from the African Union as a recognition for all these efforts to promote women's place in Tunisian society. So from this regard, I think it's a good example. Also, I have to say, this is something general, but Tunisia invested a lot on education over the years. And the human resources is one of the, if not the most important asset of this country. So having said that, it's important to consider also that we have around 67% of university graduates who are women. Getting to the industry, 44 jobs within the industry are held by women. However, when you go to business leaders, you have only 11% of women. So this is to get back on what Marina just said. Actually, we have a good representation of women in this in the industry in general in the country, But the more you go in rank and in seniority, the less women you find. And that's still something, unfortunately, that is a struggle. I mean, for us and also at international level, obviously. So we still lack representation in the highest positions. So it is explained by the nature of the industry that historically and internationally is not the most open to women. It's also well explained by the study you mentioned, and by maybe the lack of attractiveness, or maybe I don't like much the argument of the long hours, to be honest, because it's not applicable only to automotive industry, and some people actually like working a lot. So the work-life balance, I think, maybe not specific to automotive industry. Now getting back to and focusing on TAA, so the Tunisian Automotive Association, I think we have quite good representation, although it can always be better, obviously. Because we have one woman vice president, but we also have 2 women in the board of directors of the association, which might be weak, but is quite respectable, I believe, compared to similar associations worldwide.
No, excellent. Thanks for that, Miriam. And it's very interesting that you say in Tunisia, 67% of the graduates are women. So basically, the cohort that's going to go and feed the economic sector are women. So it's very good to see that your government has put in place systems and structures, for women to be able to develop, for women to be able to participate in an equal way in terms of industry. So that's very interesting. And I think it's something that other places in Africa could potentially learn from. So 67% is quite a significant number. So more women than men actually graduate from Tunisian institutions. So that's great. Miriam, while I've got you on the floor, the automotive industry does not exist in a vacuum, and it's supported by a number of adjacent industry. And that's what makes up part of the auto supply chain. You're also involved in the metals industry, and it's also an industry that, forms a critical part of our supply chain is automotive. Are there any trends and learnings and interventions that you've experienced or have seen that could be applied to the automotive industry in terms of women participation, inclusion, and equality?
Yes. Actually, as part of my job, I deal a lot with the metal industry, which is quite famous for having women representation that is even worse than the automotive industry. So a few years ago, I've witnessed that a few women of this industry, few powerful women of this industry, decided to gather together, and they created an initiative that they called Women for Metals, which is basically a network of leading women in the metals industry. So basically, they're looking to support each other and promote working in the metal industry, and to attract more and also younger women. It's focused on sustainability and diversity, and they stand for basically giving women in the metal industry more visibility, to support each other and serve as role models also with their passion for the industry. This whole initiative started during the LMA week, the London Metal Exchange Week in London, which is an event gathering all the most important stakeholders in the metals industry once a year. And they started with a tea time. It was 30 minutes tea time along this total week, but just focused 100% on women. And basically gathering all these powerful women and getting them to share about their experience and about the challenges and about the struggles basically that they meet in their everyday life. And over the years, it actually grew more and more. And now they even open it to interested companies and associations. I think it's important to have this kind of initiatives, which I see are growing actually worldwide at the moment. It's important to give more opportunities for women to network and shine. Basically, most of the time in our industry, especially, you go to places and you figure out that, okay, it's 98% men, not to say 99, or sometimes you're even the only woman at the table very often. So it's important to have the chance somehow to balance for that. And it's only by sharing together experience and also getting others to grow with us that we can support the effort and really promote women in this industry. So getting back to our beloved automotive industry, I believe we also need to create similar initiatives. I'm sure that we have some, but maybe at African level, or maybe even global actually, because the challenge is international, truly. That would be very beneficial, I think.
No, thanks for that, Miriam. And I mean, it's great to hear when women take charge and also just, you know, become the change that you want to see within the industry by starting something as small as a couple of women over a tea break meeting with each other, and it's grown to what it has grown to now. If I could switch gears now, just on that similar note, Maestra, if I can come to you, you know, as a transformation female professional within the automotive space, what significant and meaningful interventions and efforts have you seen across the continent or even within the South African platform that, you know, aim to change the way we do things in terms of women participation, inclusion, and equality? And furthermore to that, where have these interventions fell short, and where have they been really, really great in terms of driving change?
Thanks, Penny. I think the first thing that we need to perhaps is about a mindset change. And we need to embrace being disruptive. Instead of sitting back, but we need to embrace and cultivate the culture of disruptiveness. Because once we get into that space, we would then understand that we need women to become more forceful, not arrogant, but bringing their true selves forward. That being by having the right support, the right advocacy. And Lulela spoke that she actually was, pivoted by men instead of women. So advocacy comes in and plays a very, very important role by having the right people that will advocate for you. But people will not advocate for you, or our male counterparts will not advocate for you. Number one, if you are not dedicated, if you don't work hard, if you don't pull your weight, if you are not knowledgeable. Sometimes I say to the young stars or to the young ladies, as they're going into the boardroom, they should be the ones that are more knowledgeable in any topic, more than anyone else on the topics that are going to be put into place. So for us as women, the onus comes back to us that we should be studying all the time to be one step ahead, because we were not in this area before, and we don't have mothers and sisters and grandmothers that have been in this area. So we need to empower ourselves by being really, really knowledgeable on the topics that we will be talking about, and be able to articulate ourselves so that when we put our view across, it can be taken into consideration. Now, you asked me what has gone wrong. What has gone wrong is what we call compliancy. It has been very easy for companies to comply and say, we will have 50% women, but is compliancy enough, or is it doing the right thing that is important? So we need to be asking ourselves all the actions that are being embarked upon. Even when we're sitting around the board and they mention that we need to be compliant. Compliant in what? Are we representing the masses that are out there? Do we have the desire for change? Do we see diversity and inclusion as the right thing to do? If we cannot answer those questions, then we should also actually not embark on diversity and inclusions. But if we do answer those questions, then we need to be deliberate in everything that we do. Because if we don't not deliberate and hold ourselves accountable to it, it will be just another exercise that's going to fail. So it's important that we become supportive. We become the coaches that are required out there. We become the advocates that are being out there. We bring our male counterparts in there to become advocates on our behalf in order for us to see this becoming a success, not just in South Africa, but globally.
Excellent. Thanks, Ma'am Esther. And, I want to unpack a little bit of what you said. You spoke about disruption, and really this question is open to the entire panel. If you were empowered and had the decision-making power and the resources to change the status quo when it comes to participation of women in the automotive industry, what would be the one disruptive or bold action you would take to progress change if you were in the driving seat? And this is open to the whole panel.
The one thing, and maybe I could just go first. I actually wanted to add on to what Ma'am Esther said, and I think it links to the question that you asked Marina, some of the self-inflicted barriers. The one thing that I would push is stop thinking that you can't, because you're probably right. If you think that you can, you are also probably right. So I think there's a culture change that we need to stop shying away from. We believe that we are inferior. And that's something that we must openly address. Because the minute you think that that's something that you can push up, under the carpet, and then you hope that somehow, let me take you with me to my boardroom meeting and you see how things are. There's gaps in there that we need to address. So I would make it open, and it's not an embarrassing thing to say that we've got development areas that we need coaching and mentoring on. It is such a stigma that we don't actually want to. I'm also a mentor and a coach to a lot of people. I need to be first sure that they're comfortable for me to say that before I do. Something that you have to be aware of. So I would invest in opening up a culture of speaking about us developing each other publicly and openly so that people don't feel ashamed. And also you also don't feel like as if you are keeping this secret of, okay, no, let's protect that person because that person still needs to learn. Let's say we're coming together and this is what we're focusing on. And this is the development area that we are open to talk about. Because I've met, and I mentioned before, I've met men that are open to talking about it, but they're not comfortable because they don't know how comfortable we are talking about things that bother us. So I would, if I could change the world, I would say, let's openly speak up about the fact that we aim to grow together. And anything that is counterproductive, anyone who is counterproductive to that culture must be dealt with. You can't ridicule people that are trying to better themselves. That, I think, is one of the things that makes the growing and developing of people slow, because there's things that we don't want to talk about and we don't want to admit that we've got things that we're working on. And bring in that male mentor who knows manufacturing better than I do, and bring in Ma'am Esther who says, you know what, diversity is not about meeting a quota, Sissy. It's about being professional, on point, you've come to deliver here. And let's also be open about when people don't behave or bring professionalism to the table. We must also be open to say, this is not what I was expecting. This is my view. What's your view? Let's talk about it. But at the same time, we're creating a culture where we are not pointing fingers. We're just bringing each other along. So that's what I would change. It sounds like a very complicated thing, but I would structure courses and training along those lines, and also insist that in boardroom conversations, we have conversations that build other people.
Thanks for that, Ndulela. It doesn't sound complicated at all. I think it just takes some courage and some foresight, and we should see change. Can I open this up to the other panelists as well? If you had to be empowered and you had the decision-making power and the resources at your disposal to drive change in this sector related to women, what is the one bold thing or disruptive action you would take to make sure we see that change?
For me, Penny, I don't think I'll call it disruptive, but I think it's just what must be done. Truth be told, the truth is, we know that the playing field is not level. So we've got to take deliberate steps to make sure that we level the playing field. And one of the things that I personally want to see is how I'll phrase it into two. One is create visibility on the female-led businesses in the industry that are thriving, to create support. And it's not just, when I say visibility, is let's celebrate those successes that we're seeing in some of the female-led businesses. We celebrate them. As well as recently we in South Africa, Ramasela Ganda was celebrated as the CEO of the year. For me, it wasn't the fact that this is a female CEO that is being celebrated. What really struck me was the industry she was coming from. She was coming from the auto industry. And I think that is what we need to start shedding more light on. It will create more attraction to the industry. It will create more hope for those that are in the industry that we can actually do this. Then when we talk about support, again, when we say these things, we're not asking for unfair advantage. We basically need us saying, let's give support where it is due, because we already know that the playing field is not level. And here we have female-led businesses that are thriving. And I think Dulela mentioned something. It's about us identifying, as women, us identifying what our strengths are. And for me, the strength of the women in this industry and where it is going lies in the fact that service excellence is not gender, is not based on any gender. Service excellence can come from anybody, and as females, I think that we can actually give good service. So if we can identify those organizations, those individuals that are doing a great job and put a spotlight on them, for me, it's about attracting people to the industry and returning the people, the women in the industry, because they can see that they can see the possibilities. I think that we're not talking enough about the successes as well that we see in the industry that women are actually achieving. So let's put a spotlight on women who are thriving in the industry. That will attract the younger girls. But also, I think mentorship as well is important. If each one of us can pick up somebody to mentor, somebody to develop. It took somebody to say something positive to me. And it was a man, in fact, some years back. And they told me, Marina, you can do anything. You can work anywhere. You know why? You understand in business, all you need is to understand that our business, this is what we're here to offer. This is our product offering or service offering. This is how we offer it. And this is how we make our money. I think that gave me so much confidence that I could venture into mining, I could venture into manufacturing. At one point, I found myself in legal, and now I'm in automotive industry and feeling very comfortable sitting here. But I'm thinking, how many other girls need to hear just that for them to be pushed to do what they can do? So for me, let's create visibility. Let's talk about excellence. Let's create support for people. And I think that we can get somewhere.
Great, thank you. Miriam and Esther, anything on your side? If you had the power and the decision-making power and the resources, what are those bold actions you would take to drive change?
Penny, I think I will take it a step back. I'll start with the girl child. I will create a platform for the girl child that has got a clear but very distinctive path in where they need to go to. I'll start looking at their career development. I'll start finding ways to say, how do I mold? How do I mentor, like Marina had said? How do I give them the necessary support? How do I become that open door when they are truly frustrated? Because there are going to be times where they are truly frustrated, where they can come in and again become themselves. If they want to cry, they know they've got a safe space where they can cry. When they want to bounce ideas, they know that they've got a safe space where they can bounce ideas without being judged. I would really be the one that would want to be there for them to come tapping on me as a support structure. Over and above that, I would like to see that young girl child or that young woman that is out there being confident to stand on their own and not allowing anyone to take what they have from them, and being able to participate in big people's talks with the confidence, with the knowledge, with the know-how, knowing that they are not being judged on their agenda. That is the ideal that I would like to see in 10 years our time. But as I said before, it needs to be deliberate. It needs to have clear KPIs. It needs accountability from the entire leadership. That is what I'd like to see.
Okay, great, Esther. And I think, let me add some of my perspective to this. There's a couple of issues that have been mentioned. The one is around, Esther, where people view legislation as a stick and a carrot type thing, and there's compliance linked to it. The second one is, getting these ladies at a much younger age, where they're still easy to influence, where you can mold them and build them. And then another panel member mentioned mentorship and coaching. I think I'm an example of that. I was a business student for a manufacturing company for a number of years, and I was a business student all the way from high school, because the company believed that, they needed to make sure that they start building capacity for their pipeline. At a much younger age. They needed to go back into the system, into high school, not only wait for varsity, because by the time you get to varsity, there's very little to pick from. And they went back into the high school, set up a BIRSA program. But part of the BIRSA program as well was you got to go and work in this company during school holidays. And what that does, it very quickly socializes you to the world of working. It very quickly gives you the confidence so that by the time you have your degree and it's day one of you starting a professional job, you've got the confidence, you've got the mentorship, you've engaged with women in that space, and you've understood from them what does it take to make sure that you've got a sustainable career in this industry, whether it's manufacturing or another industry. So I think it's very, very important that we go back a little bit further down and start engaging with girls. Yes, we can engage with women, but I think girls at a youth stage need that engagement as well, and that motivation, and those people who are going to hold their hands and say, listen, it may look very scary from the outside, it may look like a man's world, but actually you can make it, and there's opportunity for women to thrive in there as well. Thanks for that, Ms. Esther. That was great. Talking about legislation and how people view policy and legislation as more of a compliance thing. That brings me to the topic of, what other vehicles exist in industry, apart from the legislation that, women issues can be housed under, or we can try and use them to drive the agenda for women within the automotive industry or within corporate. And one such that comes to mind is ESG. Miriam, do you have anything to say around that? I mean, you would be driving an ESG agenda as the Tunisian Automotive Association. How can we use such vehicles to propel change in terms of gender representation and equality in the automotive industry? Any views on that?
Yes, nowadays it's a very trendy word, sustainability. Actually, everybody's talking about it, and especially in the automotive industry, it's a big race to get on track and excel. Nowadays, we're starting to see more and more. It is becoming mandatory to be able to gain to keep working in this business, basically. But when we talk about sustainability, obviously we think about the 3 pillars that you mentioned: the ESG, environment, social, and governance. And obviously, when we talk about social, big part of it is gender equality that is consecrated in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5. So gender equality in the UN agenda for 2030. However, unfortunately, what we see is that we are still far from that, and it's quite unlikely that we achieve the gender parity by 2030. I think it's needless to say that the gender equality is a fundamental right. Everybody knows it. However, the disadvantage in education translate into lack of access to skills and limited opportunities in the labor market for women. And this is why we need to start by addressing this, I think, through education, through offering an equal access to education to women. I think this is one of the main pillars that will allow us to get that. When we talk again about the gender equality, we see that being half of world's population, women also represent half of the potential of the world. I mean, in the world, and by cutting them from participating in a sector like automotive is somehow cutting a big part of the potential. I believe that the growth of many companies and many countries would be much more. Would be boosted truly of integrating more women in the participations. And unfortunately, what we see is that this is still stagnating. Okay, I'm seeing now that with this trend of sustainability and these targets, we have more and more efforts to foster that, but I think it's still not good enough, and we need to address it from the most basic levels. And that's why, again, education is, I believe, one of the key words to ensure to prepare the next generations of women to integrate this valued industry. Yes, I mean, I think as for now, women, I mean, and you see it at political level in most countries, women are still from far completely underrepresented, and this is definitely something on which we have to work. Now, is a positive discrimination solution or not? Somehow, okay, some believe that it helps compensating for the lack of opportunities that had been interiorized over the years. Is it a way to correct the things? I'm not sure, but it has a role to play anyway. I liked very much something that Ndulela said for the previous question. She mentioned that women tend to interiorize the fact that they believe they cannot, and that's why they don't try. And that's actually the biggest stop to women empowerment. That's the biggest stop to women evolution in the society and at the highest levels. And that's why I think it's so important to foster and encourage these kind of initiatives to let people talk together, to let women talk together and share about the issues that are really specific to women. Because by sharing about business in general, we don't recognize it necessarily, but we get basically men insight, men opinion, and we interiorize men view. It's important to have also women way of thinking and of understanding the things in order to put some words sometimes on our own internal issues and push forward. Basically, we need to. It is better to understand when you want to address and fight something. So I think to conclude about this question and getting back to sustainability, it's important and appropriate also to put the right legal frameworks to ensure the gender equality. And to conclude, I think something very important is to support women's education, to support women leadership, and to support women entrepreneurship.
On that note, Miriam, you've mentioned something very important, and it links to one of the questions that I've got here. You know, there's one of the questions that have come through. It's from Hayley Eagle, the director of GEMSCO Automotive. And she says it's been 25 years in the industry and 9 years in automotive production that she's got experience. I've supplied brackets both locally and in Argentina. I've supplied safety critical parts and chassis. I've shown capacity and excellence, patience and tenacity, and looked after my team. GEMSCO has overcome every barrier placed in our path to exclude Black entrepreneurs. What is being done differently with data to create an enabling environment? Not just talk, but actions that will allow the Master Plan 2035 to be realized. And I actually want to add to a question to say, when we talk about women participation within the automotive industry, we don't only consider the employee role, but there's also women who have roles as business owners, as suppliers, as employers. How do we bridge the time and capacity gap that these female entrepreneurs and Black entrepreneurs will face compared to a male entrepreneur that has been in this space for a much longer time? Is there anything to share within any of your spaces? And I'm looking directly at Ndulela, because I know Ndulela has had a lot of dealings with suppliers and developing businesses. And thanks for that question, Hayley. I think it's very pertinent to the point. Let's not only have the lens of people coming into the industry as employees, but also parts of other parts of the value chain, such as entrepreneurs, such as suppliers. Can you give me some views, Ndulela, and anyone else who wants to talk to the subject?
Yeah, no, I'd like to firstly say hello, Hayley. We know each other very well. So, and I think maybe even using Hayley as an example, and this is where I think the confidence comes in. If you are able to sell your business, That's 80% of the battle won. The feasibility and the financial study, that comes thereafter. And I think that's one thing that we need to be confident in the spaces that we want to occupy, because you're competing with business people who have been around for quite some time. And I know I speak very black and white when I say it comes down to the bottom line. There are support structures that industry, companies, OEMs have put in place to give that top up to EMEs, to QSEs, to Black-owned companies, to try and ensure that they can also get that boost. I think, and also on behalf of VW, we've got a trust that was formed many years ago. We've had supplier engagements. I think as long as the OEMs are doing their best, bring your best. Because what happens is we can have a professional conversation about what it is that you bring to the table. And we can also guide and say, this is something that has been done very well by company X. Watch out for that and watch out for this. But also maybe just to speaking to Penny's point, the industry and the value chain has got many opportunities along the way, whether you are a second-tier supplier, a third-tier supplier, whether you are a service provider. What I do feel limits us is there's I don't want to say limited, but there's only this much business that we can actually allocate in terms of a long-term tender. Those are normally large items that bring on a lot of turnover and becomes like a 7-year project. There are other ways and less stringent tenders that you can actually come and say, I would like to offer my services in this regard. And another thing that I think women are probably doing better than men are, we are evolving and developing your business to be able to offer more than what you were offering last year. I think it's important to watch the trends and what's coming, because that's where the investments and the FDIs are focusing on now. Renewable energy is a big space. We haven't even understood. We've got sunshine, we've got wind farms, we've got so many opportunities where it's not necessary that we only come with nuts and bolts to offer the automotive sector. We also are faced with the challenge of we need to change our business. We need ideas of how to do that effectively and efficiently and support you. We hold your hand together. We go to the government and we say, hey, Presidential Climate Commission, there's something that we need, and we've got Black companies. Forget the way we used to do things. Now we've got new ways of doing, and therefore invest in these new technologies that are coming up. It's an exciting space to be in. So I think we need to constantly, and I'm not speaking as a seasoned entrepreneur, but grow your business, develop it to stay current. What we used to do is clearly not working anymore. That's why we've got all these challenges that we've got. So let's think about new ways of doing business and new ways of working together and make use of the opportunities, the funding that is out there. I hope that helps.
No, it helps a great deal. Thanks, Ndulela. And, as I sit here and listen, I'm thinking, there's probably other people in the audience, such as men that have joined the session. And they're probably sitting there and going, Women's Day, Women in Africa Talk, Women Intervention, Women Development. Where does that leave the rest of us? So, realistically, the changes and interventions that are that will drive women participation and inclusion in the auto industry cannot happen in a vacuum. There's an African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. Therefore, I'm going to pose this to you. There are other demographic groups and cohorts that have been in the auto industry for a long time, and they've built strong careers around this industry and may feel as if they're being excluded. And there are industry leaders who've got specific views and dispositions around women within the industry. And there's also practices that have been there for a long time. What will change management look like to make sure that we do not alienate or leave anyone behind as we progress this agenda? This is open to any member of the panel.
Penny, I think I'd like to come in there. I was actually going to make that comment. I think we should not leave our counterparts behind. We should understand that this cake is big enough for all of us. And by education, we should make everyone aware that this is an inclusive journey that we are taking. And we as women are not there to take anyone's piece of slice away. But we are more there to complement, to ensure that as we grow together and we are not leaving any people behind. But that comes with education. It's a change of mindset, but it must be a two-way street. There must be a willingness to change the mindset, to say, if I give Penny a slice of bread, it's not as if I'm not going to get 9 slices out of the bread, but I can still share. the little that I have, and not just share, but I can share my skills. I'm glad that Haley came in. Haley has gone through a journey, and as a woman, she'll be able to tell you a lot of stories as to how to navigate within the auto industry as a woman. And I think she's part of some of the pioneers as women that have come in and have paved the way for women to go forward and embrace the sector that we are in, and be the one that are getting the teachings, taking away. And she should actually be one of the mentors that are coming through for the small entrepreneurs that are coming there, because as much as we are saying it's an easy journey, it is not an easy journey. You are competing with the giants there, so you need to have a mentality of wanting to learn. That's where your perseverance comes in. Yes, we will fall, but we need to be able to dust ourselves up again and have the mentality to say we can do it. But in wrapping, I think it comes back to us being in a position to educate our counterparts and say, it's okay to allow us as women to come in. We are not taking anything away from that. We're here to complement you in order to make this bigger, in order to carry this load and make it lighter. And there's nothing we're going to take from your bottom line. In fact, we are going together. We're going to grow this bottom line. That's what I'd like to say, Penny.
Great. Any other comments in terms of how we make sure as we go forward, we don't leave anyone behind? It's not to say that we are going to stop driving the agenda of making sure that there's more representation, equality, and inclusion within the automotive industry, but it's to say, let's do it in a way that takes other people with us and doesn't leave them behind. Any other comments from the speakers? I'm trying to get Haley Eagle to see if we can put her on video just to share some of her views. But while we wait for her, anyone else who's got comments from our panel?
Yes, actually, I wanted to say something after what has just been said by Esther. I think it is really important. What you highlighted is that it is essential to educate actually both sexes. So not only women. It's good to have these initiatives, but it's also very important to speak more and to also get some men to hear more about these problematics and be aware of these issues. I'd like to tell a very quick story that happened to me a few months ago, as I was in an automotive exhibition in Germany, and I was actually quite shocked to witness that there were like 99% men. The women representation was extremely weak and poor. And as I was speaking to a customer, and we were talking about sustainability and what are the different measures adopted in our company and so on. And I actually seized this opportunity to tell him, I'm actually talking about sustainability. I'm extremely shocked by the poor representation of women during this exhibition. And then that man just looked at me and told me, but there is a plant behind you. It's the same. So not to say, I mean, this clearly highlight the need to educate, I think, men, and to make sure that these kind of things actually cannot be thought anymore in the future. Later during this discussion, and you know, when something happened to you in the professional place, you have to keep smiling. You know, you have to keep smiling and keep the discussion in a professional and serious manner. So just, okay, a few minutes later, this gentleman actually, not so gentleman, offered me, he was talking about an event along with this exhibition and asked me to be his +1. So I gently offered him to go with the plant as it was the same. And this is only these are the only things that are left to us, basically. But I think it's important to speak about these things. It's important not to ignore it, and it's important also to educate and to do whatever we can but in a gentle and respectful way, always. I mean, or at least at the measure of what you're getting.
I think you've just made a point that links to what Marina was saying, to say You know, is there a culture in place to allow women to have meaningful careers? Are there social norms in place? You know, are there social systems in place, including educating of people that, you know, you cannot categorize women and plants in the same category. Different things. So it's very disappointing of that gentleman, but I think is a good example of the work that needs to be done to educate other people that are in the industry. I've got Hayley on the line. If we can get Hayley on the line just to share some of her views and her experiences. Hayley, welcome. We would like to hear a little bit from you. A lot of the panel seems to know you quite well. So if you could just come up and contribute to this very significant and important topic, we would really appreciate it. I will give you a couple of minutes on the floor.
Thank you very much. I was also in Germany at that conference, but mainly my journey started 9-10 years ago when the South African government started an initiative to include Black entrepreneurs in the automotive industry. What had happened is that they did everything that you spoke about, the training, the ability to work with big OEMs and understand the criteria with regards to quality, like APQP, like part submission warranty, like Kaizen, like everything that the automotive speaks about, to make sure that what has kept Black entrepreneurs out, like what they said, capability, is now something that we're part of. So like I've explained, I've supplied a bracket both locally in Argentina, a steel stamp bracket, but the work is not in the pipeline. So it's very difficult. It's very easy for the leaders to stand up and say, we do this, we do that, but they don't say what actions are in place that we're going to reach the in the supply chain, have more Black entrepreneurs with an emphasis on women. And I do feel for my men. Last week I was in Dubai, and the men that's already got families and have gone through these training programs that everybody talk about, how they've given up their families to just be part of that supply chain. They end up with equipment and their families lose because they spend 5 years or more trying to become part of the supply chain, only to find that the leaders all say, yes, there's hope, yes, there's this, yes, there's that. But if you go and do root cause analysis, what is is part of the automotive industry, a fundamental thing. You go and do root cause analysis on the entrepreneurs who have come through the programs, and you say, where are they now? Are we really doing what we say, what we vocalize regularly? Are we really doing that? Are we really protecting the women in our group? Are we really uplifting them? Are we really taking their hands and taking them along? Or do we side with the men? Because I feel for the women in powerful positions, because they have to at some point feed their family. But it does mean that the entrepreneur, whether it's a male or a female entrepreneur, because we're so few, we are so few on that supply chain, that we can all be touched on and say, that business and that business and that male business and that one female business, where are they now? Are they sustainable? Are we doing what we get paid to do? Are we bringing them into the supply? Are we creating transformation, sustainable transformation? I think that we're talking about women in the automotive industry. We haven't even looked after our men yet. Some of the men have to go home to their families and say, you know, I've been 5 years through this program and I failed as a husband to you. Like I have to say to my children, I failed as a mother to you. But we must continue. And I'm really grateful for this topic, for the talk, for every effort that everybody puts in to start bringing us. But it's the hard talk that we must have. It's that talk that says, let's look at the data. Let's look at the reason for the failures of the Black entrepreneurs. Is it because the Janskos of this world are not capable? Is it because they're greedy? Is it because they don't look after their staff? Is it because we just don't want them there? What is the reason for the entrepreneurs failing? And I think it has to start with our government. So this conversation must include our government with policy, with oversight, with making sure that every time someone goes through an incubation program, that there is root cause analysis. So we salute everybody who's doing what they say they're doing. We salute them for trying. We know it's difficult. We understand it's difficult. But we're saying, as a leader, you get paid. And you need to stand up tall and say, here's an entrepreneur. What do we do to create an enabling environment for that entrepreneur, so that not only Black women can progress, but the men who are failing one by one by one. And it's not the OEMs that should be the ones in charge there. It is our South African government. Like they say in Tunisia, the lady in Tunisia says how well they do there. I come from Dubai last week, and people think of Muslim countries and being so bad. They're brilliant in their trains. In front of that trains, it's for women and children. So, you know, we need to look internally at our South African situation with the automotive industry and with all the good that everybody just promotes, and say, with that good, guys, in a private, let's discuss the bad. Let's look at the rot at the bottom. We know that what is going ahead, and we salute our government for trying and for doing that, and for having an incubation program. But it has to be sustainable, because otherwise you're just creating people who leave their families, who try for 5 years and sometimes even more to be part of a supply chain, when in fact we know that when they reach that point, we're just going to give them a machine and say, you're on your own, brother, go and do that on your own. So thank you for the opportunity. Firstly, my situation is one of good news. I know it may not have sounded like that. It's good news. I've been successful. I've been economically empowered. I've done exceptionally well. My family's done exceptionally well, but there's a lot more that can be done. And as a woman, I'm raising my voice so that the people who come behind, who knock on these doors time after time, voices are heard. And what we've done has worked, but we need to do it differently to get different results, and not forget about the people who's put in all the work and start grabbing new people, because you put us as Black entrepreneurs and as Black suppliers who show capability way at the back. So that hard conversation needs to be up. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Hayley. Thank you for that. And thank you for just allowing us to impromptu get you on board. But I mean, you are a real life case, and I'm glad to say your parting shot is that you're a good news story, and we need more good news stories. And then at this point, I'd like to bring on board Dave Coffey, the CEO of AAAM, just to say a couple of words. And if time allowing, I'll just like for one or two of my panelists just to have a closing word as well. Dave, are you on the line?
Penny, can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Firstly, I want to thank you, Penny, that you handle this like a seasoned professional, and I actually hung on to all the words and sentences. And I also want to thank the team, Miriam, Marina, Indulela, and Esther. Thank you for giving us your time and sharing your insights with us. And I just want to touch on a few of those that got me thinking. And I want to start by saying that, you know, I travel a lot in Africa, and I have seen very few women heading up senior positions in the auto industry on the continent. True diversity is a game changer, and we need to advance this discussion. But what I really liked, and I pulled from the various comments made, was this whole issue of compliance versus progressive leadership, and also the development of the right culture, the education of men and women, and having these open discussions. And this is not an issue of compliance. It's about the leadership driving this forward and actually changing the culture. It just happens naturally. Your online survey you mentioned initially, you spoke about it's not an appealing environment. And I agree that the auto sector isn't a revolution from a technology, a service, and a leadership perspective, which is going to allow a lot of opportunity to actually facilitate this change. And I really want to just emphasize that comment that was made. If you think you can, you are right. Absolutely. And I think that is very strong for me. We also learned during the pandemic that digital communication is very effective, and this can actually overcome one of the barriers that was highlighted in the conversation. So just from my side, I thank everyone, Penny, for moderating, for the team for being on the panel. I think this is a very important conversation to have, and I look forward to seeing this diversity change across Africa. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Dave. We appreciate that. I'm just going to throw it out there. Any panel member who wants to close for us, some final words to say if the auto industry had to transform to what you want it to look like, what does good look like in 10 years? Dulela, maybe we can hear from you.
I felt that coming. So for me, automotive industry would be made of highly engaged, healthy, spontaneous, innovative entrepreneurs, because we love to push entrepreneurial thinking within our organizations, and that's what's going to push us further. So I think we need to take care of ourselves, take care of each other, ensure that we grow and bring others along. The mentorship coaching theme, I think, came through on many occasions. And yes, we're not pushing quotas here, we're building societies. So that, to me, and automotive sector, I know in the Eastern Cape is very strong. It's one of the biggest sectors. We've got a lot of families that we feed and societies that we provide, whether it's education, literacy. So keep doing the good work. It is not gone unseen. Let's not give up because people think it's a little bit at a time. I think we've made miracles. There are people who would not imagine the auto sector leaving this country. And I think our government also believes it. And we get the support. We are pushing for many policies to be changed as well to try and support our industry. So let's keep at it. We're doing well.
Great. Thanks, Ndulela, for that. And just as a final one, I would like to read a comment from one of the guests on the webinar. Hi, ladies. Thank you for creating this platform. Really appreciate it. I'm in the skills and training development space for the various sector. In my 16 years experience in business, including automotive sector, I found that as women, we don't support each other fully. I myself got more support from our male counterparts. I agree with Miriam that both women and men must be educated in this regard. Automotive has always been regarded as men's world, so it scares most women, I suppose. I think on that note, I would like to say thank you to my panelist, Marina Zikomo. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much. We appreciate your kind and your wise words. Ndulela, I love your energy and thank you so much for participating. To think you were camera shy, you did wonderfully. Thank you so much for your contribution. And Miriam, thank you so much. We appreciate you giving us a perspective of what Tunisia looks like, and also just giving us a perspective in general in terms of women's rights and gender representation and equality. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Dave Coffey for inviting me to moderate. I really enjoyed the panel. I really enjoyed the contributions. And to the background team, Bernice, Matt, and Connie, you did a fantastic job. And please remember, for those who are participating, there will be a link that comes out 24 hours from now. And there's also a survey where you can send questions later that we might not have answered. We'll find a way of getting the answers through to you, or the comments from the panel through to you. And as moderator, I would like to say thank you very much, and we will see you again.